Potential tropical cyclone number 9 has formed officially in the Caribbean, and most indications has this ramping up all the way into a major hurricane by Thursday morning. So we got a lot to cover in this update. Take a look at the latest satellite picture. We can see we've been watching this area of disturbed weather down there into the Caribbean. It's finally trying to get its act together, and they went ahead and pulled the trigger and issued advisories for potential tropical cyclone number 9, which will be labeled as Tropical Storm Helene and then Hurricane Helene. There is the cool front that came through portions of Texas and areas of Arkansas overnight. And then we also have Tropical Storm John down there into the Pacific. That's actually making landfall as we speak. So here is the latest update from the National Hurricane Center. We do have that official track. The advisories have been issued. So we do have, hurricane watches in place for areas of Cancun, Playa del Carmen. They're going to be clipped from this system. You can see it's not technically even a tropical depression right now. It's sustained winds at 30 miles an hour. It's moving north around 6 miles an hour, but most indication has it's quickly ramping up and actually becomes a hurricane by Wednesday morning near Cancun. We've got very heavy rain potential in and around the Cayman Islands, as well as the Cancun area, and then it kind of splits the uprights here and continues into the Gulf of Mexico, where conditions are extremely ripe for rapid development. And right now, the National Hurricane Center officially, just on its initial advisories, ramps this up to 110 mile an hour hurricane, almost a category 3. That's pretty bullish from them on the initial advisory, and you can definitely see this continues to lift, and because it becomes in so strong, likely making landfall on Thursday, continues inland through Georgia, and then shifts northwest as well, going through Tennessee, Kentucky, and eventually ends up as a depression sometime on the weekend, all the way up into Illinois, Indiana, and Ohio. So here's the latest blend of all the models. If you take the EPS, the GFS, the UK Met, the Canadian, all the models kind of comes together. It looks like this. This is why we have the first initial cone, because we've started to get a lot more congruency starting to come together and saying, hey, it's likely going to be impacting the Florida Panhandle. But just because the eye doesn't travel over your area, you're still going to get a lot of impact. So likely the entire state of Florida is going to be feeling the effects from this system. And then this will continue to move east, inbound, and eventually lift kind of northeast and eventually northwest as it continues to make landfall during the day on Thursday. So here's the latest cone. We kind of zoom in. You can see the big picture on the satellite picture. There is the cool front that came through last night across West Texas and around the Dallas-Fort Worth area, brought some much needed precipitation. Now all eyes are on this formidable storm that's likely going to get its act together, and all systems go as this rapidly intensified. This is why they're putting the advisories out so soon, because right now literally it's just a 30-mile-per-hour storm, but we could be talking a major hurricane just in 3 days. So yes, that's why we have this warning out and saying, hey, we need to stay alert, high alert from this storm, because it definitely looks to have formidable impacts. So if we take a look at the satellite picture later on this afternoon, that cool front will continue to slide southeast. That'll bring, again, the beneficial rains further south of Dallas in and around just the eastern portions of Oklahoma, those areas across Missouri. And there'll be more beneficial rains that shift into West Virginia, Pennsylvania, and all the way up into the upper Great Lakes as well. While further south, we've got our formidable storm that's likely going to start getting its act together. So here's something interesting. We're going to be looking at some mid-latitude vorticities that's coming out of the kind of the upper levels of the atmosphere. And then obviously we have Helene that's likely going to be forming down there into the Gulf of Mexico. So what's literally going to happen is this is going to continue to lift northeast bound, and this is also going to be intensifying as well. So these could kind of interact with one another. leaving more, cooler air and more precipitation left or in this region, but also keep this system pushing northeast. But once it moves inland, likely shifts it northwest. So that's why the track comes in a little bit northeast, but officially shifts northwest as it moves inland, kind of repelling off this mid-latitude vorticity in the upper levels of the atmosphere. So a little bit of uncommon to see something like that, especially at the higher level latitudes like that. But nonetheless, this is what we're concerned about as this system gets into the Gulf of Mexico. Not just, we know the waters are warm at the surface in the Gulf because it's been pretty much untapped as of late, but the deep ocean water content and also the loop eddy that is right here out into these waters. So these are always the warmest waters anywhere into the Gulf of Mexico. And this is exactly where Helene is actually expected to travel over. And that's one of the reasons why we're seeing this surge, this rapid intensification that we're likely going to be happening unfold over the next couple of days. Here's the latest model intensity guidance, and every update this continues to ramp up. So you have most indications expected to be a hurricane, and then there's more guidance expected to be a Cat 2, Cat 3, and then yes, there are some models now, especially the hurricane models, are hinting at it could expand all the way to Category 4 at the higher end of the range. So let's kind of fine tune this. So I think things get going during the day on Wednesday, especially with that vorticity that's coming down from the mid latitude. So we're going to be seeing some inland heavy rain before Helene makes landfall on Thursday. On Wednesday, we still could be looking at some very heavy rain through Tennessee, a good part of Alabama here, as well as into Georgia, and then they're starting to be feeling the outer bands of Helene down here into the Florida Panhandle, likely on the western side of Florida, and the tip of Florida on the south side as well. But before that happens, we've got a lot of heavy rain and some winds to contend with down there in the Caribbean, especially if you've got plans heading out to Cancun. They already have those hurricane watches in effect, when it's likely going to be a hurricane right off the shore of Cancun, spreading those torrential rains and the higher wind gust inland, then as well as spreading the heavier rains and the winds through the Cayman Islands as well, all the way through Cuba. And then it kind of splits the uprights here and then heads into the Gulf of Mexico. So before that, here's your overall wind speeds that are likely going to unfold across this region. So anywhere in the green shaded area, you're looking at least tropical storm force winds. Anywhere you highlight in the orange, that's upwards to approaching that hurricane force wind gust as it continues to ramp up in intensity during the day on Wednesday. So here's the latest update. This is the latest GFS run. The GFS has been a little bit bullish and actually been on target with this system. The latest run does drop it down to a 946 millibar low pressure, a formidable Cat 3 hurricane making landfall during Thursday afternoon. If we zoom in and kind of bullseye that area, it looks to be right around. Of course, this is going to change with every model run, but as we get more guidance, it's been literally hitting at Panama City all the way down to Cedar Key. This particular run takes it just outside of the Cedar Key area. So, and then the latest, the latest hurricane models as well are just as bullish, if not even more bullish than some of the global models. So yes, not all models are that bullish. There are some on the less side. That's why we do have the official kind of meet in the middle of the National Hurricane Center saying, hey, at least right now we have enough guidance to say, hey, this could maximize and bump up to 110. But as obviously we get more data, we get a formidable center, and we start getting more drop zone data that feeds back into the models, I feel like this is going to ramp up as this continues to get closer to land on Thursday. But right now, it's definitely scary to look at some of these hurricane guidances dropping this down to a 932 millibar low pressure. That would definitely be a formidable Category 4 hurricane if that came to fruition, and that puts it just on the outside of the Cedar Key region as well. So this looks to be a more favored area, and you can definitely see that is the middle of the cone of uncertainty that the National Hurricane Center has out right now, literally from Panama City all the way down to Tampa on the outskirts. Anywhere in between and likely further in the middle is likely we're going to see the greatest impacts from this system. But you don't have to have the eye or even the cone to have impacts from this storm, because these are likely going to spread out well away from the center. And one of the things that's concerning too is the lack of wind shear that likely unfolds once it gets into the Gulf of Mexico. So once it passes this region where we are technically right now, then there's not much shear to contend with, right? This is what the GFS, the hurricane models are kind of looking at. That's why they're showing such rapid development and intensification. So we're trying to give you as plenty of advanced warning as possible. So, hey, don't let your guard down. I know it's only a 30-mile-per-hour storm right now, but literally in 3 days, we could be looking at a major hurricane making landfall in the United States. So that is the concern with this system. And also the concern is just the copious amounts of rain that is going to be coming in with this system, especially with an east loaded system taking likely the entire state of Florida with it, with heavy rain and the winds along with it. And that would likely spread since it comes in so strong. Tropical storm force winds, hurricane winds extending well away inland through Georgia and even into portions of South Carolina. And there's the upper level vorticity that's likely going to get its act together on Friday, still around, kind of repelling off of each other, as we'll likely have Helene over Georgia by then. And then once it feels the effects of this vorticity, then it's likely going to be shifting a little bit further off to the northwest. But yeah, here's your preliminary wind gust as it moves inland. So right now we've got the cone from Panama City all the way down into the Tampa region, likely in the middle, taking the full brunt of the heavier wind gust, very heavy rain on the outskirts. And then you can see the 90, if not 100-mile-per-hour wind gusts reach well inland into Georgia, extending into hurricane force wind gust, even in approaching the outskirts of South Carolina as well. So the high winds take it well inland, and obviously we have to be concerned about tornadoes as well. So even on Friday, we could still be looking at a formidable tropical storm or even a hurricane, still borderline hurricane, even as we head into Georgia, extending into South Carolina. And then we also have that other vorticity extending the heavier rain swath across a good parts of Missouri, and then extending into Illinois by then, Indiana, as well as Ohio, and back into West Virginia. So if we break it down, you can see the big picture. You know, hurricanes steal all the thunder and they take all the energy out of the atmosphere. This is your precipitation amounts over the next 7 days, and that's exactly what you see here, as most of the precipitation in the U.S. is confined around with what be Helene, putting the heavier amounts inland through Florida, all the way to Georgia, through the Carolinas, as well as into Virginia here. And then with the other vorticity kind of fishtailing back off to the northwest, would likely extend the heavier rains through Illinois, Missouri, as well as into Arkansas, with a piece of it shifting into Oklahoma, and then points further north as well through Kentucky, Indiana, and Ohio, and eventually swing far north as Virginia and even portions of Pennsylvania, with lighter amounts extending further northeast you go. So guys, I will continue to keep you well ahead of the storm. Hit the subscribe button and make sure you like this video, and catch me next update, why I protect you before and after the storm.